All right, we're in the cab of your 299 D3XE. One of the improvements they made was on this door. They changed the geometry, the way this opens up and closes. The old ones, they only opened up to about that far. Now you're getting almost full 90 degrees exit, and you can also raise the loader arms up higher and still be able to get out. We're gonna go ahead and close this up. Just simply grab there and pull it in. This is gonna be your door release. These are gonna be your emergency escapes. So you crank those to the side and you can break the glass out to get out the front. Or I guess this is polycarbonate. The back window also has an emergency seal brake there. And then here is your emergency bleed off. If you ever lose an engine or something and that loader frame's right in front of you, you just reach up here and pull it. It'll bleed pressure back to tank so you can get out. Fire extinguisher mount. We're gonna fire this up. There's a few different safety switches to get this thing fired up. So you do have a magnetic door switch here. That's gotta be touching. You gotta have a guy in the seat. There's a pressure switch in the seat, and then your arm bars have to be down as well. We're gonna key on. Usually at least let it beep. The ECMs are talking to each other, getting everything ready. I'm gonna fire it over. So, got the heater on here. Let's go to AC mode. Pillars for AC, kind of like the older ones. These doors, or these windows, do have this additional latch here that helps seal and pressurize the cab. So you want to be somewhat conscientious of those. You don't want to leave them down and then try and force the window open. Always relieve the pressure, then you can open your window. So up here on the right side, we've got our hydraulic lockout switch. Mainly, if you're working on the machine, you want to lock out the hydraulics, you can. Maybe you're doing some troubleshooting that requires you to test engine, but you want to lock out travel and implements. That's how you do that there. You've got your lights front and rear. And then that's going to be your continuous flow switch. We'll go over that shortly. Your ride control switch. And this is going to be your manual override reverse fan switch. On the left side, we've got our aux functions 8 and 7. So these are going to be, for instance, this one with the rabbit. The trigger is going to actuate that. But if you ever get an attachment that has multiple functions, there are some attachments where you have to toggle out the 2-speed, and that takes over your joystick trigger function for aux hydraulics. This is going to be your auto bucket level switch. With that thing on, when you boom up with the bucket, it's going to keep it in a level position. If you leave that thing off and your bucket's back in a cut position and you boom up, it's going to keep it in that same fixture. So what I do recommend, this mulcher is really heavy. You're going to like it better if the auto level is off. And I even like to turn ride control off, because what that does is you have accumulators built in on the loader frame, and as you go over rough terrain and bumps, they'll actually cushion your hydraulics on the loader frame to help soften your ride. And something this big and heavy, it's going to be more drastic than you want. So the bucket and forks, that's completely fine, but when you're running this big guy, I would recommend turning ride control in the off position along with your bucket level in the off position. You just want full control of that thing. You don't want it bouncing or cushioning when you don't want it to. So your HVAC controls are up here, AC on, AC off, and then heater, blower speed, and then your window. So you got on, and then press past the detent for spray, and then you can turn it off. Over here you do have a Bluetooth microphone. You also have your engine RPM, hand throttle, and then you also have the foot throttle down here. This guy here too, so when you're running in full high idle, your pedal then becomes a decelerator, kind of like a dozer. So I've got my pedal all the way down on the floor and I'm at a low idle. As I lift up my foot, you go back to high idle. And that decelerator function is only going to work when you're maxed out on the green side. If you're in turtle mode, it just works like a normal throttle pedal. This DPF logo, that's mainly just reminding you that this machine's only cooking out the filters when you're running high idle. So these are actually designed to run full bore, full speed, and you get more endurance out of your DPF filters and systems that way. I'll try to brace this up here, but this is going to be your screen. So button on the left, backup camera. That will come on automatically if I take this out of park brake here. Let me boom this up a little bit. So if I go into reverse right now, it'll automatically come on. Okay, and then you let off, it'll automatically go back. If you want this to run with it on the whole time, you can click that button there. So here we got our fuel, our DPF, or diesel exhaust fluid levels, engine coolant level, hydraulic temperature level, engine RPMs, hour meter, and your voltmeter, along with date and time. So any of these icons in the center here, like for instance the picture in that settings cog, correlate with the button below it. So camera, you hit that button. If we want to go into our settings button, we hit that guy. So here we got basic settings. So machine, display, job clock, service, and user management. Starting from user management first, you hit this enter button to navigate. You can view your events, your diagnostics, for instance. If we had codes or anything, they'll be stored there. You can restore to default system settings and enable the security. I would recommend thinking about this one before you do it. So if you do want to have a password on the machine, you would go into here and click enter and you'd set that up. But once it's set up, the only way to turn it off is to have a CAT technician plug into it with CAT ET. So you want to be sure about that. Most people that work on high production job sites where they have multiple operators in there, you literally have to key on, type your code in, and then fire it over it. It adds about 15-20 seconds to your start, and some people don't like that. So coming back into the settings here, we're going to navigate to the left. Service, this is your simple service items and your maintenance intervals. So for instance, we go to preventative maintenance. It logs all of your hours and such before your services. It will send you bells and whistles and messages when you're due for the services. Status parameters, you'll probably not need to go into there. System information, I believe that's just your software code. And then you can flash over USB with software, that's for technicians. Job clock, if you do want to run a job clock for counting anything, you probably won't use this, but for instance, you can start, stop, and clear. Yes. This guy here is your display settings. So we can change our units, language, digital readout, gauge layout. There's a few different gauge layouts you can pick from. This one's just defaulted. For instance, your backgrounds, that's set. Your backup lines on the camera, just simple display settings. Pretty simple, self-explanatory stuff in there. The one option you might spend some time in messing around with when you first get it is the machine settings. So this is what I was telling you about. So everything on this machine, from the hydraulic valve bank perspective, there's no more mechanical linkage. It's all done electric over hydraulic. So you have solenoids on each valve bank. This top guy is going to be your steering response. So if I go into here, I can tune that down. or up. So for instance, if you're not used to the machine, or you have a friend or family member that wants to run it, you might want to put that into the softer tune settings. Along with this one here too, that's going to be your bucket implement response. So what that's going to do is you're really limiting the voltage going to your solenoids and your controls. So for instance, if I'm trying to boom up now, it takes a little bit more effort than if I was, they call this a coarse setting. If I was in coarse setting, where it's going to be a lot more responsive and a lot more throw the dirt out of the bucket kind of setting, you know? So I like them on high. If it feels too whippy or too aggressive, just know that that's where you can tune it down, is those top two. Your travel response and your implement response. This next guy is going to be your creep mode. So I'm actually going to back that off. That's set to like 20, I believe. We'll just put it halfway, and I'll show you that in a second. So that's how, whenever you get into creep mode, which is going to be this button down here, what is that defaulting to speed-wise? And that's going to be limiting your total travel speed while you're at high idle. This is your ride control setting. So again, I would leave ride control off when you're running the mulcher. But when you have that bucket on, it's going to default to 5 miles per hour. So at 5 miles per hour travel speed, what time do those accumulators kick in and start cushioning your bucket load? And you can bring that up or down. So if you're wanting to have ride control come on sooner, you'll bring that down to a slower mile per hour. Or if you want it to come on later, you bring that up to a higher one. So again, 5's the default. Ride control is automated, so when that switch is on, when you hit 5 miles per hour, your bucket is cushioning with the accumulators, just so you know. This next one is a new feature on the D3. So this is going to be your track travel override, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what the formal name is. But for instance, if you're on a hill and you're working a grade and you're running this machine on a hill like that, if you were to just track this thing straight forward, you're probably going to start dipping into the hill as the contour of the hill is going to pull you down. Gravity's going to pull you down. So you can actually go into here and favor if you want overpower on either left or right side track. So for you back there in the east, I don't know how much hills you got, or if you're going to be working very aggressive contours. But if you are cutting something that's on a bank and you got a drastic hill, you can favor or overpower that one side for your tracks. It'll send more power to the left track versus the right track. This next setting is going to be your speed limiter. So that's going to be your total output basically. Again, if you have like a friend or family member that wants to mess around in this thing, you can soften the performance up and limit their total speed. So hey, I only want them to go 50% of machine capability. You can adjust that there. I'm gonna leave it back on 100. This next one, so that's gonna be your reversing fan automated settings. So again, you do have a manual override switch here. So I just pressed it. It comes on, it's reversing right now. You can hear it. Now this guy is you indicating I want the reverse fan to come on every 30 minutes, and the setting right below it is for 8 seconds duration. So how often? 30 minutes, and I want it to run for 8 seconds. That's going to be it for the screen itself and the machine settings. Besides that, back here we do have your radio, and then you have your inner cab air filter here as well. And then on behind the right hand shoulder, you do have your fuse panel. inside there, you just pull that tab, yank it out, and there's your fuse panel. There's also your Cat ET port for hooking into it for Cat technicians. These arm bars, this lever here, you can adjust it in or out on both sides. And then your seat, you've got a heated seat switch right here. That's on or off. And then your air ride fill, and then pull it out to bleed. So you can fill up your air ride seat and bleed off pressure if you want. This coupler here, so this is what you're asking about earlier. So this is gonna be your quick coupler. So right now we're in the locked position. I will try and show you how to do this with it on, so, or with one hand, I should say. Actually, we'll just rack it back. So to work this guy, you slide the safety switch up and then go lock down. So we're fully unlocked, and then you would drive in and out of your work tool. And then to lock it, you just press and hold the top. And that's gonna lock everything back up front. I think that's about it for the cab. If you have any other questions, feel free to give me a holler. These guys, oh, actually we do have a couple more things. So horn, this is gonna be your creep mode. So when you hit this yellow button, you get the snail that comes up. So you're gonna use these two buttons to set how fast you want your total travel speed to go. So if I'm running high idle, it's only gonna let me go setting 10 or wherever this is set to. When that's on, you're limiting the travel speed. To turn it off, you can just hit the button. Your continuous flow here is another cool button. So we're gonna press this, and you'll see on the screen, you got that flashing green continuous flow. So now I'm going to press and hold the thumb wheel in the up position for about 2 seconds. And then it stays locked. And then you simply toggle the button back for it to come off. Once you toggle the button up, you just bump it. It'll put it back into standby mode. And then you can press and hold it again for a couple seconds. Oh, I didn't do it long enough. Press and hold for a couple seconds, so I'm in continuous flow mode. I flipped the thumb wheel back up to turn it off and to go back into standby mode. So continuous flow with the creep mode can be pretty effective. And some people, like guys running snowblowers and such, they'll be getting that perfect cut and they just know their setting. So let's say, hey, I'm blowing snow really good at setting 10, high idle with continuous flow running the whole time. These other buttons, they're called the C buttons, and they correlate with your auxiliary hydraulic functions. So for instance, on snow blowers, to change the chute, you press and hold this guy and actuate your thumb wheel. And then to go the other way, you press and hold that guy and actuate the thumb wheel. And you also have your diagrams for what all the buttons do on this side. And I think that's about it.